One can easily demonstrate, though, that the word combination was commonly used in the 19th century and earlier in the sense of conspiracy. Thus, its use for the robbers of Gadianton seemed to bear little real significance for the question of the Book of Mormon's authorship. Dan Vogel took the argument even further. At the time of the Book of Mormon's publication, he claimed the term secret combinations was used almost exclusively to refer to Masonry. Mormonism with the Murph, where Larry Singh explores church history and the church's truth claims. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm back now from holidays. I had a really great time over in Italy. We went to some beautiful places. We went to the Dolomite Mountains. We went to Florence, Venice, and Rome. Highly recommend going to Italy. It was a class holiday, a really good break. But now I'm back and I'm ready to continue putting out content and finishing my series on the Book of Mormon. So in the previous episode, we had a look at where is the location of the Hill Cumorah. Is the Hill Cumorah in New York the same location as the Hill Cumorah, where the final battle happened in the Book of Mormon between the Nephites and the Lamanites, and also the Jaredites? We discussed how it was the traditional view of early church leaders and members that the hill in New York was the same hill where the Nephite final battle happened. This likely came just from the cultural and the folklore, assuming that this was the hill where the final battle happened, but it was never actually revealed to Joseph Smith from Moroni. We also discussed how it's archaeologically a clean hill, there's no battle artifacts there, and how the Book of Mormon specifically talks about how Mormon buries the records at the Hill Cumorah, the same hill where the final battle happens, save these records, the gold plates, which he gives to his son Moroni. So the Book of Mormon text actually clearly says that Moroni does not bury the plates in the Hill Cumorah, and he takes them with him. He, flees from the Lamanites, and he's traveling for 36 years. So clearly the Hill Cumorah in New York is not where the final battle happened, according to the text of the Book of Mormon, possibly allowing for Moroni to have traveled for 36 years and to have buried the place up in New York. In today's episode, we're going to be having a look at the criticism is the gadianton robbers and secret combinations spoken of in the Book of Mormon, does this just come from Masonry, and is this anti-Masonic rhetoric, which was in Joseph Smith's environment and milieu in 1829, with the death of William Morgan and Andrew Jackson running for president, who was a Mason, and all this fear of the Masons, what will happen to the country if they come into political power. And is this therefore a 19th century influence come from Joseph Smith's environment, showing that this is just a 19th century text and that the Book of Mormon is fictional? So I'm going to strive to present the critics' view and their arguments, and also some of the faithful apologetic responses. Just a wee reminder to all my listeners who have not subscribed, please subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on any future content. I've got a lot more videos coming out this way, ones that I'll be creating, and also interviews with different scholars and people about their faith journeys. And also those people who have subscribed, make sure the notification bell is on so you don't miss any of my future content. But I will typically be releasing a video every Thursday and Sunday evening UK time. So, without any further ado, let's dive in. So here are the gadianton robbers. Gadianton robbers were a band of robbers in the ancient Americas, according to the Book of Mormon. This dangerous group operated as a secret combination, a term used to describe various malevolent secret societies. The gadianton robbers were much feared and have been held responsible for the destruction of the Nephites and the Jaredites. So critics would say that despite Joseph Smith later becoming a Freemason in 1842, two of his family members, his father and his brother Hiram, being Masons, that the Book of Mormon reflects an anti-Masonic rhetoric, and it is against secret combinations, and the fear of the Masons most likely influenced the text of the Book of Mormon and the anti-Masonic themes. Martin Harris referred to the Book of Mormon as the anti-Masonic Bible, and all those who rejected it would be damned. So both some early converts to the church and also some critics and newspaper reporters would have interpreted the secret combinations in the Book of Mormon as being anti-Masonic, applying it to their day. Dan Vogel states that the Book of Mormon goes beyond secret combinations, combing the following four elements in the decline and fall of the Nephites and Jaredites. 1. The ascendancy of secret combinations. 2. The rejection of religious leadership. 3, the loss of social and political equality, and 4, the fragmentation of a centralized government. He then details how the Book of Mormon weaves these 4 issues throughout its text. And you can read more about Dan Vogel's view in his article, Mormonism's Anti-Masonic Bible. So basically, critics would state that the secret combinations and the gadianton robbers in the Book of Mormon come from Joseph Smith's environment and milieu, as Masons were often referred to as engaging in secret combinations, secret oaths, and rituals. All the fear of the Masons and the anti-Masonic rhetoric going around in 1828-29, around the time where Andrew Jackson, who was a Mason, was running for president. Many, both critics and also believers, would have read about this message of secret combinations and the gadianton robbers being similar and a forewarning of the secret combinations in their day. So let's have a look at some of the faithful apologetic responses to this theory by critics. Fair responds that this speculation linking the gadiantons to the Masons doesn't take into account that there were Masons in his home, such as his father and brother Hiram. It would seem unlikely that Joseph would be using anti-Masonic language and terms, given his family's close connection and association with the institution of Freemasonry. In 1842, Joseph Smith Jr. became a Mason. Had Joseph intended to tie the gadianton robbers to Freemasons, it seems most unlikely that only 12 years later, he would then join the very group which the critics' theories require that he opposed so vehemently in the Book of Mormon. They also stated that the phrase secret combinations was not used exclusively in a Masonic context in Joseph Smith's day. Now, I will be referencing throughout this video Dan Vogel's response to apologists. The title of his video is The Book of Mormon and Freemasonry Part 2, where he responds to the apologist, and he does provide some responses to some of these things. So I'll put the link at the end of the video if you want to watch it, and I'll reference some of his responses as well. But he would say, even though that Joseph Smith may have been anti-Masonic late 1820s, that doesn't mean he could possibly have changed his views later on. Blake Ostler, in his article, The Book of Mormon, a modern expansion of the ancient text, has to say, the anti-Masonic controversy that erupted in Upper New York in 1826 after the disappearance and assumed murder of William Morgan is also often cited as an obvious 19th century source for the Book of Mormon's denunciation of secret combinations between 1826 and 1830. The Anti-Masonic Party emerged as a major political force in Western New York. It was asserted that as a result of the Masonic oaths to keep the rituals of the lodge secret and to protect another member of the fraternity in all circumstances, right and wrong, Masons were at full liberty to conceal others' murders and treasons, and the judges were corrupted. Richard Bushman has this to say about the connection between the Gadiantons and the Masons, and maybe some of the dissimilarities between them. The Book of Mormon does not describe such Masonic characteristics as elaborate rituals, degrees of initiation, competing orders and fraternities, legends of the Ark of the Covenant and Hiram Abiff-T, the mythic heroic figure of Masonry that were typical objects of ridicule in anti-Masonic rhetoric. However, Dan Vogel, in his video, he responds that Mormon in the Book of Mormon states that it is that the record of the Gadianton secret oaths and rituals won't be revealed in this record, and he compares their oaths to latter-day secret combinations. So Vogel also argues there isn't an explicit mention of Jewish customs and rituals, and so we shouldn't expect satanic secret combinations and the rituals to be in the record. Why would one expect satanic secret combinations of Gadianton to be revealed in the text? So Blake also goes on to point out some differences between the Gadianton robbers and Freemasons. The Book of Mormon bands of robbers were not a quasi-religious fraternity, but rather resemble bands of robbers and insurgents in the ancient Near East, identifiable in legal materials from early Babylonia to Josephus. Robbers in ancient Near Eastern law applied technically to those who lived outside the community which they plundered and robbed. These robbers were an organized society. The Book of Mormon secret societies were not a continuous brotherhood, but were 5 different groups springing up in different periods. They maintained a separate social identity from the society which they plundered. Nowhere in anti-Masonic rhetoric were Masons referred to as a distinct band of robbers. The Masons were never identified as a group which held out in the mountains and attacked as a marauding robbers. and resembles neither ancient Near Eastern robbers nor Masons, but rather the mafia or Cosa Nostra crime rings based on family organizations. The binding power of the oath, though singled out by the Masons, is also common in the ancient world. Book of Mormon robber bands and Masonry shows that the book differs in important respects from Joseph Smith's society and appear to be influenced by anti-Masonic terminology and concerns. This could be explained, as best it seems to author, as Joseph Smith's independent commentary on Masonry, sparked by his reflection on Nephite secret combinations. Apologist and scholar Dan Peterson, he has this to say about the connection between the gadianton robbers and Freemasonry. That the prior death of William Morgan, who was a Mason, murdered for divulging Masonic secrets, and the anti-Masonic rhetoric around 1830, and the Book of Mormon's denunciations of secret oaths and combinations, would indeed sound Mason-like. Peterson argues that gadianton robbers shouldn't be exclusively referred to as Masons. Other groups or organizations in history, such as communists, Colombian drug cartels, mafias, and other malevolent murdering conspiracies, should be cautious to conclude that the Book of Mormon reflects Masonry. Those who insist the gadianton robbers emerge just from Joseph Smith's environment, having considered other groups in other time periods also resembling them. Apologist Greg Smith states that many critics claim that the phrase secret combination is either exclusively or mostly used towards the Masons in 19th century America. Studies were conducted and some counterexamples were found referring to the non-Masonic organizations as secret combinations found before, during, and after the 1828 to 1829 period. Peterson, in another article, states, secret combinations revisited, one can easily demonstrate, though, that the word combination was commonly used in the 19th century and earlier in the sense of conspiracy. Thus, its use for the robbers of Gadianton seemed to bear little real significance for the question of the Book of Mormon's authorship. Dan Vogel took the argument even further. At the time of the Book of Mormon's publication, he claimed the term secret combinations was used almost exclusively to refer to Masonry. Vogel's own evidence demonstrates what has been known for many years, that the phrase was indeed sometimes employed in reference to Masons. A computerized search of available 19th century federal and state court opinions revealed 10 occurrences of the phrase secret combinations, not one of which referred to the Masons. The phrase secret combination, used in a plainly non-Masonic context in a letter from late 1826. This establishes that the phrase was being used to refer to things other than Freemasonry before Joseph Smith obtained the plates. Thus, we can now say, without fear of contradiction, that non-Masons accused of involvement in secret combinations, both before and after the publication of the Book of Mormon, and even most particularly during the anti-Masonic hysteria of the late 1820s. The claim that the Book of Mormon secret combinations, simply because they are called secret combinations, necessarily betray their origins in 19th century anti-Masonic paranoia. So the apologists are arguing that secret combinations can't be exclusively referred to as the Masons in 1829, that there's other groups and secret societies throughout history that the term secret combinations can be referred to, and that combinations is also sort of synonymous with conspiracy and plotting to overthrow the government. And the argument that the gadianton robbers clearly reflect the Masons and comes from the anti-Masonic rhetoric in Joseph Smith's environment may not necessarily be the case. And they would also state that why would Joseph Smith put in such an anti-Masonic rhetoric into the Book of Mormon when his family members are Masons and then he later becomes one? I know Dan Vogel would probably say that it's quite clear. I think there's a statement from Joseph Smith in his video where it seems like maybe Joseph Smith is against these secret societies and secret oaths, and it's also possible that his views may change. Critics would respond, so this comes from LDS discussions, finding outliers or other groups or organizations in history doesn't disprove the case that the gadianton robbers resemble Masonry, which was the main secret combination discussed in Joseph's day and environment, and how others saw the Masonic influence and rhetoric to the point others labeled it as anti-Masonic. So Dan Vogel, in his YouTube video, he responds specifically to some of the apologetic responses of like Blake Ostler, Richard Bushman, D. Michael Quinn, Greg Smith, and Daniel Peterson. I'll reference the video at the end. I can't go through in detail everything that he brings up, but I've done my best. I'm going to try to summarize the main points that he makes in favor of secret combinations resembling the anti-Masonic rhetoric, as him trying to be objective and balanced and present the critics' response. So he points out that believers such as Martin Harris, as well as critics like Alexander Campbell, Eber D. Howe, and others, interpreted the secret combinations in the Book of Mormon as anti-Masonic rhetoric. Masonry was described as a work of darkness to overthrow religion and free government. He responds specifically to Osler that the gadianton robbers aren't just a secular robber band, but an ideological, political, and religious movement. Book of Mormon warns us of future combinations in the latter days during the political environment of Andrew Jackson and his political campaign as a Mason. Some of the references in 1828 to the Masons have similar resemblances to the secret combinations in the Book of Mormon, in that their main object is for anarchy to rob and plunder. Smith connects Cain to the Masons in the Book of Moses, referring to him as Master Mahan, similar to the third degree of Masonic initiation, Master Mason. The Masons weren't just a magical cult, as Quinn states, but a political group seeking political rule and to overthrow the government. Gadiantons are not directly identical to Masons or all Masonic elements. Will responds, but Joseph's cultural influence and his own imagination in the text, he created the Gadianton robbers, but the differences does not mean that there's no link or dependence, that there's both secret signs, oaths, and combinations, which are central to both the Gadiantons and Masons. And while apologists find the term secret combinations can be applied to other organizations at different times, the main use of secret combination during the 1829 context is towards the Masons, and that Masonry was not a secret combination, but the secret combination in early 19th century America. So that'll be sort of like the critics' response, that even though, yes, you can find outliers and other groups and societies at other time periods being referred to as, secret combinations, critics are arguing that Masonry was the main secret combination happening at that time, and that the Gadiantons don't have to be a 100% perfect reflections of Masons, but it is likely a link and a influence and a dependence where Joe Smith got it from. So while most of the apologetics so far have been trying to defend that secret combinations doesn't exclusively refer to the Masons, and that there's other ancient societies and secret groups in history that could also match the description of the Gadianton robbers, Frank Gardner, in his article, The Gadianton Robbers in Mormon's Theological History, Their Structural Role and Plausible Identification. And you can also read about this in his book, The Book of Mormon as History. He has a chapter on the Gadianton robbers. And development of the civilization of the Gadianton robbers matches and correlates very well with the growing civilization of Teotihuacan, both in time and geographical location, fits very well with Mormon's description both of the land of Teotihuacan, arguing for the Gadiantons at the end of the Book of Mormon narrative are likely the civilization of Teotihuacan. In Helaman, chapter 3, verse 4-7, Mormon speaks about a migration of peoples northward and describes the land they inhabited as being northward of Nephite lands, that there are many waters, it is nearly desolate of trees, and that there are many cement buildings. 100 BC to 600 AD, there's only one area in Mesoamerica that fits all of these descriptions, and that is the city known as Teotihuacan. It is north of the Nephite lands, a place of much deforestation, and there is expert buildings of cement. You can see on the map as well the location of Teotihuacan being in the land northward. So it's located in roughly the right location in Mesoamerica to John Sorensen's map of where the Gadianton civilization would be. Teotihuacan is the only location that fits the location, land description, and time period Mormon is referencing. Looking at this civilization might be an explanation for the Gadiantons of Mormon's day. Gardner states the rise of the Gadianton influence beginning after 200 AD in the Book of Mormon is a direct parallel to the rise of the Teotihuacan's expanding influence and the time period that saw the construction of many of the cement buildings in that city, including the Temple of the Feathered Serpent, which is now understood as dedicated to the cult of war. This influence increased in geographic spread and physical presence from about this time until the time of Mormon, and continued after the close of the Book of Mormon. This matches the description of the Gadiantons spreading over the whole face of the land. This comes from LDS Truth Claims, the demise of the Nephites. Beginning around 280, 250 to 350, Teotihuacan's characteristic architectural features begin to appear in Maya cities, over 600 miles to the south, showing either political governance by acceptance or military conquering. The increased Teotihuacano presence in the Maya heartlands gave both the Maya and Teotihuacan a strong motive to secure the trade route that ran through the Nephite territory. Mayan scholar Ross Hazig said, Teotihuacanos wanted control of the civilizations along the trade network, supporting a war for annihilation for complete control of the trade route. The desire for control of Maya markets may have triggered a war of mass destruction. Gardner goes on to say, unfortunately, there are very few pre-conquest texts to tell us about the Teotihuacanos. Gardner speaks of the Nahuatl text from the Florentine Codex containing pre-contact cultural information about pre-contact secret societies. When Sahagún translated the native source into Spanish, he spoke of Nonatzaleque as assassins. This provides a pre-conquest group who were a secret group and agreeing with the intent of disrupting the government through murder, a group accustomed and daring to kill. This pre-conquest group might be described as a secret combination. While existing long after Teotihuacan, Gardner states that there are some connections that can be found between this later military order from central Mexico to the secret combinations Mormon reports in the land south. Both groups have internal structure. Both are linked to the disruption of political entities. Both of these are at least grossly similar to the Book of Mormon's description of secret combinations. He goes on to say that a military association from Teotihuacan that brought a new militaristic philosophy tied to a new emphasis on sorceries, witchcrafts, and magics is a remarkably apt description of the Mormons' contemporary gadiantons as well as the Teotihuacanos. The known history of that time period completely supports the nature of the description that Mormon gives for the gadianton robbers with which he is personally familiar. In the greater context of Mesoamerican history, there is every reason to suppose that Mormon was concerned with the militaristic influences coming from Teotihuacan. The time period ascribed to Mormon's last gadianton robbers directly parallels the time frame for the expansion of Teotihuacan and their particular brand of militarism throughout the Mesoamerican region. The rise of the gadianton influence beginning after 200 AD in the Book of Mormon is a direct parallel to the rise of Teotihuacan's expanding influence and the time period that saw the construction of many of the cement buildings in that city. When we place known Mesoamerican history side by side with Mormon spiritual history, we find in both accounts militarism exacerbated by a small contingent of foreign elements from the lands northward. The Book of Mormon's timing for this description corresponds directly to the secular history of the expansion of the Teotihuacan throughout all of Mesoamerica, but particularly the Maya region to their south. And if you want to find out more about what Brant has to say, read through his article. There's also a chapter in his book, The Book of Mormon as History. And I'm hoping to bring Brant back on, and we're going to talk more about Mesoamerican geography and Mayan culture and some of the similarities to the text of the Book of Mormon. So hopefully that will be interesting.
We get the Book of Mormon, and the Book of Mormon ends, and the Nephites are gone, and we're sad. And then he mentions that these gadiantons show up and that the gadiantons are all over the place. And in the way Mormon tells the Book of Mormon, he uses the gadiantons as sort of the ultimate boogeyman of, what causes the end of civilization. The gadiantons is being references to Teotihuacan, which is a location to the north. And this is at the time of the end of the Book of Mormon. This is a time when Teotihuacan is getting very powerful and very influential. Teotihuacan's in kind of the heart, Mexico City, not too far away from Mexico City, maybe an hour's drive. But Mexico City, kind of in the heart of Mexico. And then down south, get my hands where you can see them, down south, you got Teotihuacan up here. Down here, you have Guatemala. Down in the heel of the boot, if you imagine that area of Mexico. And that's where the Maya are. We have records that in 378 AD, Teotihuacan is invading the Maya area. And so they're coming from the north and going down through the south, going through the Isthmus of Tehuantepec, which would be the narrow neck of land in most Mesoamerican concepts of geography. And now you have a really powerful Maya culture, a really powerful Teotihuacano culture that are connecting, and there's really strong ties, and they want to have economic ties between the two. And sitting right across the trade routes in that narrow neck of land are the Nephites. And right at that point in time, it finally becomes economically feasible to have a war of destruction. Wars where you try to eliminate a people are very economically destructive.
Yeah, yeah.
They're expensive. And so you've got to have a really good reason to want to get rid of somebody. And apparently that was the reason. So when we get to the history of Mesoamerica, at that time period, we can explain why the Nephites were destroyed at that point, and they never were before, and why things were different at that time period. And it will correlate with how the Book of Mormon is describing things.
So Book of Mormon Central has to say this in sort of a good summary of the faithful position. Critics have pointed to the secret societies in the Book of Mormon as fictional and that they're disguised as 19th century Freemasons, pointing to the similarities between both groups of secret combinations, that this is a term exclusively for Masons in 1829. Even if in 1829 secret combinations was exclusively or mostly a reference to Masons, it doesn't mean Joseph fabricated or stole its content from that, as many ancient societies had secret groups that were involved in oath-related conspiracies to get rich or influence the government. Scholars who have studied secret societies have been struck by their similarities, even when they are from different locations and time periods in the world's history. It is therefore not surprising that the gadianton robbers in the Book of Mormon share some similar features with the Freemasons of the 19th century. Nor is it surprising that the Book of Mormon's 1829 English translation used secret combinations to describe them. It was a general term, often used to label Freemasons, but also used to describe a host of other secret 19th century groups, and a term which would apply equally well to secret societies all over the ancient world, including ancient America. Okay, so in summary, what we've discussed in this video. So in the Book of Mormon, it speaks of gadianton robbers. It talks about them being a band of robbers that was founded by a wicked Nephite named Gadianton. They show up prior to when Christ comes in the Book of Helaman, and then they show up after, about, I think it's like 260 years later, and they are a main reason for the destruction of the Nephites and also the Jaredites. Their organization was based upon secrecy, secret oaths, murder, political overthrowing, conspiracies, and even satanic oaths. So critics would state that the term secret combination and pointing to secret oaths and rituals is direct borrowing from Masonry and the Anti-Masonic rhetoric in Joseph Smith's 1829 Environment and Milieu, and that Masonry and the Anti-Masonic rhetoric was a likely influence and a source for the gadianton robbers in the Book of Mormon and secret combinations. Secret combinations was commonly used to describe the Masons. Apologists argue that secret combinations wasn't exclusively used to describe the Freemasons, but other secret societies throughout history, and that other ancient secret groups can also be referred to as secret combinations. Osler and Bushman also refer to some of the differences between the gadianton robbers in the Book of Mormon and Freemasonry, resembling more ancient secret groups, mafias, rather than Masons. Vogel responded in his video that many of the dissimilarities are actually things that people would have referenced towards the Masons in Joseph Smith's day. And he also argued in his video that the gadianton robbers don't have to be directly 100% identical to the Masons of Joseph Smith's time, because if Joseph Smith is the author, then he's going to be adding in his own influence and imagination into the text, but drawing upon the cultural influence of Masons and secret combinations. Critics would state that, finding other societies, both around the time and in ancient history, doesn't negate that the most frequent and main use of the term secret combinations was towards Masons in Joseph Smith's milieu, and that it doesn't undermine the argument that Freemasonry and the anti-Masonic rhetoric was the influence for the secret combinations and the gadianton robbers in the Book of Mormon. Gardner points out the similarities between the rise of the gadiantons in the Book of Mormon and the descriptions of the land northward being a land of many waters, deforestation, expert buildings of cement, matching the location of Teotihuacan, and also the rise being at around the same time and being in the right location. And that the gadianton robbers, who are responsible for the wiping out of the Nephite nation, matches very well with the time and the locations in Mesoamerican history. That the Teotihuacan civilization engaged in a war of mass destruction, of sole power of the trade network between the North and the South. So with this one, I really can see the critics' position, and I can sort of relate with both sides. If you believe that the Book of Mormon is not historical and a 19th century text, then the Book of Mormon's use of gadianton robbers and secret combinations and secret oaths does have similarities and connections to Masonry and the Anti-Masonic rhetoric happening in the 1829 milieu of, William Morgan's murder a few years prior and Andrew Jackson running for presidency, and the fear that they would overthrow the government and overthrow religion. So I think this would be a very obvious, this is the naturalistic explanation for the theme and the plot line of the gadianton robbers and secret combinations in the Book of Mormon if you're a naturalist. For a believer in the historical Book of Mormon, the apologists state that the term secret combinations is not exclusively in reference only to the Masons, that it can be used to other secret societies that have happened throughout ancient history. So that secret combinations doesn't just refer to Masons. So it can refer to other ancient society secret groups and conspiring groups. And Brian Gardner, I think, provides quite an interesting case, and I'm hoping to go a little bit deeper with him when I bring him back on, connecting the gadianton robbers in the Book of Mormon to the civilization of Teotihuacans. And really, if there can be found a historical case that matches the description of the gadiantons in the Book of Mormon, if a strong, compelling historical case can be made for who the gadiantons were, then really the critics' theory that this is just coming from anti-Masonry would really not hold up as strong. But I see that there's a couple of different interpretations one could draw, and I don't want to overly sway you either way. So, of course, you come to your own conclusion, which you find more compelling. I will put some links in the description for some of the articles and some videos you can watch to go a little bit deeper. And I'm hoping to bring on maybe both Dan Vogel and Brent Gardner to go a little bit deeper in their views on anti-Masonry and the gadianton robbers. So that pretty much sums up today's video. In the next video, we're going to be looking at anachronisms in the Book of Mormon. More specifically, we're going to be looking at physical anachronisms in the Book of Mormon. So looking at like horses, elephants, wheat, steel, goats, kind of all the physical anachronisms that the CS ladder would point to. We've already sort of discussed some of the different textual anachronisms like New Testament passages or Deutero-Isaiah. We're not going to be really discussing that as much. But we're going to be looking at that in the next video. So if you enjoyed this video, give it a like, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye. Combining... Combing. Matches and correlates very well with the growing civilization of Teotihuacan. Teotihuacan. Thanks everyone for watching this episode. If you've enjoyed it, please give it a like, share it with others who might benefit, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future content. You can also listen to these episodes on podcast form on Anchor or Spotify, and you can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Check out my website for more content, personal blog, and more. And if you care to donate to support me, you can via my PayPal or Patreon, or through the website. And you can also give donations via YouTube through Super Chats. Thanks for watching Mormonism with the Murph. Take care. Bye-bye.